Hello everyone and welcome back to Wargame Red Dragon. We're continuing our look at the Eurocorps Armory and Deck Builder, and we've already said that we have a down-vetted Leclerc here, and we're moving on to sort of more of your medium to medium heavy tank options, specifically the Leopard 2 at 80 points and the Leopard 2A1 at 100 points. We have Bikefish here with us to talk about why you might want either of these tanks and which one you should bring.
Yeah, both of these tanks kind of represent either end of the archetypical blue 4 medium tank. You have something here that's roughly between, say 75 and 115 points. That fills the role of being something cheap enough to actually be usable in mass, but also be potent enough to use in a durable way. That is, we have something that is more than 13 frontal armor, which we have in spades here with the Leopard 2 chassis. The main point of note between these two tanks and why you might choose one over the other mostly comes down to the fact that the 2A1 gets additional AP on the gun and additional optics. These are really the important things that come out of it. The other stats are close, and we can kind of, argue the minutiae of those depending on what we want. But with the Leopard 2A1's improved AP, you're going to get much better range scaling, and with the optics, you're not quite as blind as you would otherwise be.
Now, for both of these tanks, you will still want to have recon. Medium optics are not good enough in a game that relies on recon, but I do just want to cycle back to something you said a little bit earlier about 13 armor value. Why is 13 armor value important, and why is it important that both of these tanks have higher than 13 frontal armor value?
So 13 armor value represents the breakpoint at which a kinetic energy round that is scaled to 30 AP will one-shot a tank. This happens at forest ranges when you have tanks that hit, I believe it's actually 18 or it might be 19 AP, I forget exactly which it is. They will scale to 30 inside of a forest fight. So if you send in something with 12 frontal armor into a situation where it's facing a 30 kinetic energy round, it will just die to one shot. Something with 13 frontal armor will live with at least 1 HP.
Gotcha, so the Leopard 2 and the 2A1 both have the capability to take a shot from literally anything at point-blank range, and they'll survive, maybe not well, but they'll at least survive that first shot and be able to return fire at least once.
Or back up in the case of a forest.
Yes, exactly.
So really what it comes down to picking between these two is whether or not you value those two items for the Leopard 2A1 over the base stats of the Leopard 2. Most commonly, you'll see the 2A1 chosen simply because having medium optics does cover a lot of edge cases where the poor optics on the Leo 2 might cause you some difficulties. Additionally, that additional AP is very nice. You also have a couple other minor little stat boosts with the 2A1 that definitely make that 20-point difference not matter as much.
Yeah, so for example, the 2 additional AP, it changes the tank, in my opinion, from being something that maybe isn't super comfortable taking other tank-on-tank engagements to something that, while not a super heavy or anything remotely qualifying as that, it can definitely take engagements with Red 4 tanks, particularly in the same range, and be reasonably comfortable that if you micro your tanks better, you can definitely come out on top. So both of these tanks also do have another difference, which is availability. Right now we're looking at the 2A1's availability, 8 at trained, 6 at hardened, and the Leopard 2, you get 10 at trained, 7 at hardened. Is that something that can factor into a decision between these two tanks as well?
Not really, in my experience, because in EC, you're typically going to be building for a 3-card tank tab. We're going to leave out one unit, the AMX 10 RCSB, from this discussion just for a little bit. We'll come back to it later. And it's traditionally taken as kind of a 4th card. But what you're going to fill out these next two with is a Leo 2 of some sort for both slots. A couple different comps you would be able to use alongside a single card of Leclerc's down vetted would be either 2 Leopard 2A1s up vetted, a Leopard 2A4 up vetted, and a Leopard 2A1 up vetted. All of these are going to kind of give you the sort of numbers you would want. And thinking about how expensive tanks are and how much income you're getting throughout a match, and how important it is to keep tanks alive, we don't necessarily need those bigger numbers that come from a single card of Leo 2.
Gotcha, and just to take a look at this real quick, we're going to pin the 2A1, and I'm a particularly big fan of the Leo 2A4, and that really comes down to 2 particular reasons. The first is that 19 frontal armor can survive a run from an enemy peace run, so that's 26 AP, 2 missiles, even if both hit. I believe the 2A4 at full strength does survive, so it has to be at full strength. But that's a whole other discussion. So you get much better longevity and resistance to ATGMs and similar for not much extra point value. And the other reason that I really do like it is because even though it might not seem like much, 19 versus 18 AP power, it feels like a lot. Plus you get additional side armor, which is just a little bit extra insurance that a bad position doesn't necessarily have to be fatal. So is it the best bang for your buck upgrade for 30 points? Maybe not. But particularly the frontal armor value, I think, has a lot of return on investment. Now, you do pay for that in availability, 5 at train, 4 at hardened. And the way that I run this, I agree with Bikefish entirely. If you're going to run the 2A4, run it upvetted, and yeah, I've never really run through both Leclerc's and all 4 2A4s and not have the game already be over. So, sort of its own statement there. Bikefish, how do you want to leave this for our own tank recommendations?
What we have on the screen is perfect. I do just want to make a quick note on that side armor that you mentioned. The Leopard 2A4 does actually have enough side armor to survive a side shot from full HP from a few very common missile systems, including the Spike.
And that Spike is that notorious Baltic and Israel ATGM that's at 21 AP power and relatively high speed, although I think that was nerfed in the South Africa patch, is sort of ubiquitous if you're playing against a couple of decks that have access to it. Now, a Conqueror's M will still give you one hell of a bad day, but,
Yeah.
That's its own separate discussion. The Spike with its high accuracy is just, it's a persistent side armor killer, so the 9 side armor is very good for that. Alright, well that's our tank recommendation for right now, and we'll be back with another unit comparison tomorrow.